Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Everlynn's Books and Tea. We are recording the last video of the month of March, and that is our TBR video for April. How we got to the end of March, I am not too sure. My time management this month was terrible. You'll see when we go through my March TBR how well I did with my time management of reading. Not so good. But April is a new month, so I have a chance to redeem myself in April, and hopefully I will be able to do that. I did enjoy the books I read in March, though. I will definitely say that, and I did have a little bit of a reading slump along with my time management problem, but the books that I did get to, I definitely enjoyed reading. So I'm hoping that April will be just as kind and good at giving me some books that I enjoy. Just hopefully not as many as I got in March. I will say I also spent like 5 hours trying to fix my dishwasher, only to call my parents and they told me to tap on the solenoid, which is, underneath the dishwasher, to see if that would fix it. And lo and behold, 2 taps on that and the dishwasher started running again. So that was 5 or 6 hours wasted where I could have been reading these books. So that's neither here nor there. Let's move on and see what books I got to in my March TBR, see how well I did or more likely did not do. And then we'll go ahead and start our April TBR games. Let's go through these quickly because there was a lot of them. So we're going to start with the jar pulls. From our series jar, we got The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. We also got The Body in the Library. And neither of those did I read. From our new release jar, we got The Spirit Collection of Thorn Hall. Also did not read. And then from our science fiction fantasy award-winning / nominee jar, we got Rosemary and Rue, which I was actually looking forward to reading, but did not get to. So failure there. Let's now go through the prompt cards. We had a series prompt, which was Remembrance of the Past series, and that book was A Dark Forest. Did not read that one. Then the other series prompt we got was the Scholomance series, and I was on the last book, The Golden Enclaves, and I'm currently reading that right now, which is why I only have the book cover. But I'm about 100 pages from finishing, so this one will definitely be done. So yay, there's one book. Then we had a cover with planets, stars, etc. on it. Did not read either choice for this prompt. Next, we had a seasonal prompt, which was a book set in a cold place. Again, did not read either option. Next up, we had an author's whose last name started with a random letter. We got E, so we had 2 Kendra Elliott books to choose from. I did end up reading Hidden, which is the first book in her Bone Secrets series, and enjoyed it. So 2 books I have read. Next up, we had an author's debut novel. I ended up reading The Awakening of Ren Crown by Anne Zoll and really enjoyed this one, so did get to this prompt as well. Then we had our cover prompt, which was a neutral cover. I am currently reading Lament. I actually just started it today, but this will be done by the end of the month, so that one will be complete. Then we had a seasonal prompt, which was blue, white, or gray on the cover. Will not be reading either of these this month. Next up, we had a magical realism book, which was a astrological prompt. I will be reading Wayward by Amelia Hart, and this book will also be finished by the end of this month, or at least started, so it will count. And then last but not least, we had a title prompt, which was a book with a forward title. Did not get to either of these. So in April, I will have read 5 out of, I think, 14 books on my TBR. So not great, but hey, 5 is better than nothing. All right, let me put these away and then we will get started on our April game. So I'll be right back. All right, all books have been put away. The cards are back in their bags and it's time to start playing the game. So since we failed the March TBR, what we'll be doing is for one roll, we have to choose 2 books. So the way I'm going to do it this game is whatever roll we land on that gives us our first jar pull, we're going to just choose 2 books out of the jar. So that makes it nice and easy. So I think that's everything. For those who are watching for the first time, we have different tokens that we'll be adding onto the board, which you'll see us do first. And the major tokens to know are the boarding pass, which if I land on it, I have to go all the way back to the beginning of the board, keeping all the books I've already read. And then the time for vacation tokens. If I land on one of those, I just have to go back to the nearest time for vacation token. So those are the 2 major ones. So let's go ahead, bring up the game board. We'll put those, I think there's like 11 tokens randomly on the game board, and then we'll get started with our first roll of the game. So here we go. All right, so the tokens are on the board. They are definitely not well spaced out. I don't know what our random number generator was up to this time, but there's a lot of boarding passes very close to the end of the board, which is where I do not want them. But hopefully that does not mean this game is going to give me like 20 books. We're going to think positive. It's the start of spring. We're on our spring game board, which is my favorite one. This is going to work out for us. So let's go ahead, bring up that first roll, and get started building our April TBR. All right, we're starting off slow as you can go with a 1. We ended up on the yellow flower though, and that corresponds to our yellow bag over here. And for springtime, this is my favorite bag because it has all our seasonal prompts in it. So the prompts that change every season. For this month, we have prompts that have to do with April, springtime, as well as the astrological signs of April, which is Aries and Taurus, I believe. So let's pull out these prompts and see what we get for our first prompt of April. I am super excited to build this TBR. I just have a good feeling about it. We are going to get some good books on here, and we are going to read our April TBR, every book on it, by the end of the month. All right, so let's mix these up real quick, do a quick little shuffle, and we'll split the deck right there. And our first prompt for April, I just realized I haven't figured out how to focus this camera still, so bear with me. We have a astrological prompt, which is Aries. I don't know if it's going to focus. Oh, it is. So it features fire or flames on the cover / title. All right, so fire or flames on the cover or in the title of the book. All right, so let me look through our physical book options first, and I'll be right back. I thought maybe the Phoenix Keeper would have some fire on the cover being a phoenix, but it does not, so that's not an option. One Dark Window has smoke, but not flame. All right, here's one option, the dagger and the flame. Here's another option, catching fire. All right, I think we're going to choose between these two options. We have The Dagger and the Flame, which is by Catherine Doyle. This is obviously a fantasy book. It's a YA fantasy book, I believe, that features 18-year-old Seraphine, who is running for her life, and she seeks sanctuary with the Cloak, which is one of 2 enemy guilds, the Cloaks and the Daggers. And she ends up coming face to face with Ransom, who is the heir to the Order of Daggers after she seeks sanctuary with the Cloaks. So it looks like it's kind of like an enemies to lovers, it says right down there. A enemies to lovers romantasy. So that's our first option. And then Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins, which is the second book in the Hunger Games, is our second option. And this one has fire in the title. This one has flame. While this book definitely sounds interesting, I think I'm going to go with Catching Fire. I want to make my way through the Hunger Game initial trilogy so I can read the prequels, which I haven't read either of them yet. And it's been a long time since I've read this trilogy. So I think this will be our first book on our April TBR, Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. Now, we also need to choose a Kindle option. So let me take a quick look at what options we have there, and I'll be right back, if any. So for those who are wondering, each month when I do my Kindle options, I just choose 75 random books from my Kindle list on Goodreads, and then I put them on this little board here so I can choose from them. I also choose 5 books that I want to read, and then it also has some of the series books on here as well. So that's kind of how I come up with this little board. I am looking through it, and I don't see any books that have fire in the cover or a flame. Let me take one more quick look, and I'll be right back. Okay, I lied. I did find one. It is called River on Fire by Scott Pratt. I have no idea what this book is about, so let me bring up my Word document that tells me. So River on Fire is a standalone that tells the story of Randall Smith, who is a orphan growing up in the Midwestern U.S. in the late 1960s. He struggles to understand a dangerous and confusing world during one of the most tumultuous times in modern history. So it's kind of like a character-driven book, I suppose. But that will be our Kindle choice because it has fire in the title. Again, that's River on Fire by Scott Pratt. So one roll down. Who knows how many to go? Let's bring up the game board and do our second roll. Alright, for our second roll, we did a little bit better. We got a 5, so we're moving forward, and we did land on yellow again. So let's bring up that yellow bag again with the flowers and choose another prompt from our seasonal prompt bag. Alright, here we go. We're going to mix these up. Hopefully we get another good prompt that we can fulfill. Another fun one like that. That was an Aries prompt. Did I say that before, by the way? The first one? I don't even remember. All right, let's split the deck here. And this will be our second prompt of the game. It's a spring prompt. And it is a book with a bird on the cover. All right, another cover prompt. Let's find some books with birds on the covers. All right, I'm trying to think what else I need for this month. I think I need a book that has a brown cover. I need a book with the word river in it, which technically we already have, but that's for the Magical Readathon Adventures in Eldia series, so I kind of want that to be a fantasy book. I think that's it. Brown on the cover, river in the title, and then a fantasy science fiction book by a female author, which is, we already have that in Catching Fire. So let me go look through my books and see what options we have that have birds on the cover. There's always the Phoenix Keeper. That's technically a bird. It's a fantasy bird, but it is a bird. All right, didn't really see any other books that had birds on the cover, so we're going with the Phoenix Keeper, which is by S.A. McLean. And this book is set in a zoo for magical keepers. And it follows the head Phoenix Keeper, whose childhood dream of conserving critically endangered firebirds seems closer than ever. So to do this, she ends up having to muster the courage to ask for help from the Griffin Keeper at the zoo's most popular exhibit. And that Griffin Keeper, of course, happens to be her arch rival from college. So this seems like another enemies to lovers romance type book, and that will be our second book for April. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Kindle book, see if there's any birds on the cover for any of those. All right, so we actually have several options on Kindle, on our Kindle books, and it looks like a couple of historical fiction books and a fantasy book. So first up, we have Crow Hollow, which has a crow on the cover. And this book is by Michael Wallace and is set in 1676, where a young Puritan widow and an English spy journey across a land where greed and treachery abound. So the book follows Prudence Cotton, who has recently lost her husband and her daughter has been kidnapped. And she's convinced her daughter is alive, but she needs help to go find her. And then James Bailey, who's an agent of the Crown who was sent to Boston to investigate Prudence's murder, or Prudence's husband's murder, and to also cause a disturbance that would give the king cause to install royal governors. So James's partner ends up murdered, and he ends up striking a deal with Prudence, and they together traverse the forbidden New England landscape looking for clues. So that's our first option, a historical fiction book set in the 17th century. All right, next up we have another historical fiction book. This is book 2 in the Six Tudor Queen series by Alison Weir that follows Henry VIII's wives. I really enjoyed the first book and definitely want to read the second one. This one follows Anne Boleyn, who ends up marrying Henry VIII as the second of his queens. So it kind of follows her story. So that's our second option. And there's some sort of bird on the cover right there. I'm not sure what type of bird it is. And then last but not least is our fantasy book, and that is The Last Ever After, which is the third book in the School of Good and Evil series, which is like a middle grade fantasy series based around fairy tales. I enjoyed the first 2 books, but haven't gotten around to reading this third one yet. But this follows 2 people who grew up in the same town named Sophie and Agatha, and every year children are taken from their town and taken into this fairy tale forest where there is a castle of good and a castle of evil, and these books kind of follow these two characters throughout their time in that castle and everything that happens during it, basically. It's hard to describe without giving too much away. So those are our three options. I don't know what I think. I think I'm going to rule out Crow Hollow because I don't really want to read a book set in 17th century United States, which leaves us with either Tudor Queens or The Last Ever After. I think I'm going to get a middle grade book on here as a easy read just in case I need it. So let's go ahead and choose The Last Ever After, the third book in the School of Good and Evil series. Hopefully this will be the right choice. Time will tell. Oh, and this one has swans on the cover. I don't think I mentioned that, so fits the criteria of the prompt. All right, so that's 2 rolls down. Let's bring up the game board and do our third roll. Another good roll. We rolled a 6. This time, instead of yellow, we landed on blue. So let's grab that back and see what prompts we're looking at. Soon these rolls are going to get dicey though, because we're going to be coming up on all of the boarding passes here shortly. All right, so in here we have title prompts, so prompts that have to do with the title of the book. We also have some miscellaneous prompts and then some series prompt cards, which are series that I'm currently in the middle of reading. So if we get one of those, we'll just choose the next series. All right, these are all flipped around. Right. Okay, here we go. All right, let's mix these cards up. I don't know how that happened. And then we'll go ahead and choose our third prompt of the game. We are getting all prompts, no jar pull so far. Worst case scenario, we'll have to choose 2 books from the science fiction fantasy jar at the end. All right, here we go. Our third prompt for April is a title prompt. I don't know if this is going to focus. There we go. And it is a title with a word related to reading. I think this is the first time I ever drew this one. I don't even remember making this one. So reading, library, librarian, books, anything like that, bookstore, anything that you can construe to mean reading. There's just a loud thump upstairs. Not sure what's going on up there. All right, let me look through our physical books. I'm sure we have some books that have to do with reading in the title. So let's see. All right, we have The Book Swap. That definitely has to do with reading. Way up there, we have Where the Library Hides, which is the second book in Isabel Ibanez series, What the River Knows. So if I go with that one, I will pull that one down. And we got The Left-Handed Booksellers of London. That's another option. All right, so we have our 3 options to choose from for this prompt. We have Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibanez, which is a historical fantasy novel. We have The Book Swap, which is a romance. And we have The Left-Handed Booksellers of London, which is also a historical fantasy novel. The Book Swap is about a man and a woman who meet through a little library, exchanging book notes in margins of their beloved books, and they end up meeting through that only to find that they share a past or something like that. So that's an option. We have The Left-Handed Booksellers of London, which is set in a alternate 1983 London, where there are 2 types of booksellers, the left-handed, which are the fighting ones, the right-handed, which are the intellectual ones. This book follows Susan, who's looking for her dad, and Merlin, who's looking for criminals who killed his mother, and their paths end up crossing, and they have to kind of discover why. Then we have Where the Library Hides, which is the second book in a duology that is set in Egypt. It follows Inez, who is living in Brazil. Her parents are archaeologists in Egypt, and they end up disappearing, thought to be murdered. And Isabel ends up traveling to Egypt to figure out what happened to them. And with her, she ends up carrying a magical artifact that gets activated on the journey. And that is what the books are about. I don't really want to go into too much more because I don't want to spoil the first one by saying what this one is about. But those are our 3 options. And of these 3, I think I am going to go with Where the Library Hides because it has library in the title, so something to do with reading. and it will help me finish a series, finishing the duology. And I really enjoy the first one, and I can't wait to see how the second one ends. So that will be our third book. Now we just need to choose, see if I have a Kindle book on my little board that meets this prompt. I'm not entirely sure I do, but let me take a look and I'll be right back. All right. I looked through all the Kindle titles. There's not one that has anything to do with reading in the title. So there will be no Kindle choice for this prompt, which means we will have to read Where the Library Hides to fulfill it, which is fine because that was probably going to be the one I was going with anyway. So let's go ahead and bring up the game board and do our fourth roll. I just noticed the pretty blue cover, or not cover, pretty blue edges on this. All right. Anyway, bring up the board, fourth roll. Alright, we're slowing down a little bit. We only rolled a 3, but that's okay. This time we landed on pink, so we're going to get to choose a prompt from a new bag. Alright, here is our pink bag. Alright, in here we have prompts that have to do with the cover of the book, and again, some miscellaneous and some serious prompts as well. So let's mix this up and see what we get for our fourth prompt of the game. Again, no jar pulls. Crazy. We usually have at least 1 or 2 by now. Alright, let's split the deck, and this will be our prompt. It is a cover prompt, and it is a cover with a holiday theme. All right. I guess there's Easter in April, but I don't think I have any books that have an Easter theme. But let's see if we have any books that have any sort of holiday theme in them. Who knows? We could be reading a Christmas book in April, but that's okay. All right. I definitely don't have any physical books that have a holiday theme because I tend to buy my holiday books on Kindle. So let me look through the Kindle books and see what options we have there. Actually, that's not true. Forgot I have this one. We have 8 Nights of Flirting by Hannah Reynolds. This is a Hanukkah book, and it has a little Hanukkah candle on there. It says Hanukkah, so I will say that this has a holiday theme on it. So this is the book we are going to go with. I think it's like a YA romance book. So this book is set around Hanukkah. It follows Shira and Tyler, who is Shira's nemesis / former crush. Now Shira wants to win Isaac over because her whole goal is to get a boyfriend this Hanukkah, and she feels that Tyler is a perfect person to teach her how to do that. And in exchange, Shira is going to help Tyler, I think, do better at work. And during this, she ends up finding out that she actually likes hanging out with Tyler, and then they end up getting snowed in. So that is going to be our physical book option. Let's see what we have for our Kindle books. All right, so we have 3 books on Kindle that are set at Christmas. So we're going to end up having to choose one of those. They are the Christmas Pearl, the Christmas Sisters, and the Christmas Window. Let me look through the descriptions and see which one looks best. I think they're all romances. No, maybe not. So the Christmas Pearl is by Dorothea Benton Frank, and it follows Theodora, who's the matriarch of her family. And her family has all come together to South Carolina to celebrate Christmas. And Theodora is sad because this Christmas is nothing like the ones that she remembers that are kind of like the homey Christmases, staying home with goodies on the table, over-the-top decorations, long chats in front of the fire. And luckily, someone hears Theodora's plea for help, and they arrive with magic and common sense to straighten everyone out. So a little bit of Christmas magic. The Christmas Sisters is by Sarah Morgan, set in the Highlands of Scotland, and follows Suzanne, who is dreaming of the perfect cozy Christmas, and her 3 adopted daughters are coming home to see her for the holidays. The 3 sisters are Hannah, who's a workaholic, Beth, who is a stay-at-home mom having a personal crisis, and Posey, who isn't sure she's living her best life, but with her parents depending on her, making a change seems risky. But not as risky as falling for gorgeous new neighbor, Luke. So a little bit of romance, a little bit of family, holidays. And then last up is The Christmas Window, which is a holiday romance book by Melissa McClone. It's also book 1 in her Silver Fall series, and follows doggy daycare owner Callie, who wants to win first prize in the annual window display competition in her town. And then Brant Winslow is the male character in this book. And the last thing he wants to do is rehash the past, but returning to Silver Falls means confronting the reason he left. So those are our 3 options. I think I'm going to go with The Christmas Sisters just because it's set in the Scottish Highlands, and that's one of my favorite places to read books. That's one of my favorite settings to read books in. And it just sounds like a nice, cozy kind of family holiday to read, you know, in the middle of April and springtime. Why not? So that's the fun of the TBR game. You never know what you're going to be reading. So let's go with The Christmas Sisters as our Kindle option for this prompt. All right, time for our fifth roll of the game. Let's bring up the game board. Alright, this time we got another good roll with a 7, and we will be choosing from our blue bag. And I believe this one has our title prompts in it, because we chose from here before. Yep, title prompts, miscellaneous, and series prompts. So let's mix these up and go ahead and choose our next prompt, because the camera battery is down to 31%, so we need to get this game going. Alright, here we go. This is going to be our prompt. And it's a title prompt that is a book with a book with a food in the title. My gosh, these are very specific prompts we're getting this month. All right. Food in the title. Let's see what we got. I don't know if we have any. All right, so we have Blood Orange, which is book 1 in a Dracula duet by Karina Hall. Holly. All right. Our one and only option for our physical book is not one that I was planning on reading this month, but here we are. And that is Blood Orange by Karina Holly. And this is book 1 in her Dracula duet. You know, Dracula and April. Wasn't really planning on that. We're having a lot of books that we weren't planning on putting on this TBR, but that's okay. That's what makes it fun. I have no idea what this book is about other than it's a Dracula duet. So it's a dark romance. So orange is our food in the title. So this is the book we'll be adding. Let me take a look at our Kindle, see if there's any options on our Kindle board as well. All right, so apparently we're just going to be dabbling in all the seasons this month. We got our Christmas, Hanukkah, last roll. This roll we're going for like the fall Halloween with Blood Orange, and then the Pumpkin Spice Cafe, pumpkin being a food in the title. So this book is a cozy romance book by Lori Gilmore, and this is book 1 in her Dream Harbor series. It's kind of went viral last year, and people either really enjoyed it or did not, it seemed. So the book follows Jeannie and Logan. Jeannie gets gifted her aunt's beloved pumpkin spice cafe in the small town of Dream Harbor, and she's excited about this fresh chance and a new job. Logan is a local farmer who avoids Dream Harbor's gossip at all costs, and Jeannie's arrival ends up disrupting Logan's routine, and he wants nothing to do with this irritatingly upbeat new girl, except he ends up finding himself drawn to her. So that will be our Kindle option, a fall romance. So we got winter down, we have fall down. Maybe we'll get some spring and summer books on here as well. All right, let's do our 6th roll and see what we get. Alright, this time we got a 3, so not as great, but we still haven't hit any boarding passes, no time for vacation tokens, so can't really complain. We did land on pink though, so let me grab that bag now and we'll choose a prompt from there. Alright, so this again has our cover prompts, miscellaneous, and some series prompts. So let's see what we get. Alright, I'm kind of liking how this is stacking up. Definitely have some interesting variety on here. All right, let's split the deck here and see what our 6th prompt of the game is going to be. Oh, a series prompt, and it is the... What series is that? Oh, the Time Quintet series. Well, there we go, Time Quintet series. So this is the Wrinkle in Time series, and I am actually on the 4th book, so I'm almost finished with this series, and I'm excited to be adding a middle grade book onto this TBR. Let me... Oh, here it is. All right, so this is like I said, the Wrinkle in Time series by Madeline L. Engel. And the fourth book in the series is Many Waters. This book features twins, the Murray twins, Sandy and Denny, who find themselves suddenly in a desert and have to figure out how to stay alive and get back home. I remember reading this book when I was, a kid, and I remember really enjoying this one in the series. So I'm excited to get this book on to my TBR. It'll be a nice, easy one to mix it up, a nice middle grade book that should be a quick read. So Many Waters will be our book for this role. And we only get to choose one because it was a series prompt. All right, bringing up the game board again, and let's do our 7th roll. All right, rolling small numbers again, but we got a 2, so we move forward a little bit, and now we're back to the blue bag again. We just keep going back and forth between the blue and pink bag, I feel. All right, back to title prompts. And then, of course, some miscellaneous and some series prompts. So let's see what we get for our... Why are these all mixed up? All right, let's see what we get for our 7th prompt of the game. All right, here we go. Split the deck there. And this will be our prompt. It's a miscellaneous prompt this time. And it is a book over 500 pages. Ugh. That is not what I wanted because we are on 7 books already. I was not, hoping for this prompt. So let's see what books I have that are just over 500 pages. Cross our fingers. So hear me out on this one. So Zodiac Academy, Book 1, The Awakening, which is by Carolyn Peckham and Susan Valenti, is exactly 500 pages. Now, the prompt does say a book over 500 pages, but I'm thinking it should have been over or equal to 500 pages. And not to mention that technically, even though the last several pages are blank, the last page number in this book is 512. So while the book technically ends on 500, the pages keep counting up until 512. So I'm going to say that this is going to meet the criteria, and I really want to read this. I've heard so many people say good things about it. It's a fantasy romance, or it's a dark kind of fantasy, dark romance, dark academia, and it's set in a magical school, which are all the things that I love. It features twins who have to go to this magical school after finding out that they're fae, to inherit the kingdom that they didn't know that they even had a claim to. So I think we're going to do it. I've been wanting to read this, like I said, so this is going to count. It's technically 500 pages. The book counts up to 512, and it's going to meet the criteria. So this will be the physical book that we're going to choose, the Zodiac Academy, and I am super excited to get a Dark Academia book on here. Now we need to look at our Kindle options, which means I need my computer because that is where I wrote all the page numbers down. All right, so on my computer, I have an Excel spreadsheet of all the Kindle books that are on the Kindle board, and one of the things I keep track of is the page count. So I'm going to sort these books via the page count and see which ones are over 500 pages long. All right, we have 7 options. So we have a contemporary romance book that seems super long. It's 534 pages, called Summer at Willow Lake. That seems really long. We have several science fiction books, which seem about right, as well as a couple of historical fiction books that also seem right, and a thriller book that's 600 pages long. So I don't know what book I want to choose. So our book options are, I'm just going to read these very fast. Summer at Willow Lake, Velocity, Weapon, The Moat in God's Eye, Children of Ruin, Sandstorm, My Dear Hamilton, and River God. All right, let me see if the Summer at Willow Lake is truly over 500 pages, or if I just missed entering the correct number. Nope, it is over 500 pages long. So this is what I am kind of debating on. So The Summer at Willow Lake is a romance book. It's a very long romance book, which doesn't always bode well for contemporary romances. So I'm a little nervous picking that one. It's set on a lake at a summer camp that needs to be renovated, and the new owner of the camp, falls in love with the renovator, blah, 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 blah. The next book that I'm thinking about is The Velocity Weapon. So this is book 1 in the Proctorate series by Megan E. O'Keefe. And it follows Sanda, who who's on a her gunship, which is breaking up, and she seals herself in a preserving pod to be picked up by salvage medics, and only to find that she is picked up but awakens 230 years later. The war that she was in has been lost, and the star system that she has known is dead. And she is now on a empty enemy smart ship known as Barrow. And that is what Barrow is telling her, but Barrow may not exactly be telling the whole truth. So we have kind of a smart ship who has rescued Sandra. And then the last one I'm looking at is The Mote on God's Eye. So this is by Larry Nevin and Jerry Purnell, who are pretty famous science fiction authors. And this is book 1 in their Moti series. It takes place in 3016, where intelligent beings are finally found from the Mote, which is an isolated star in a thick dust cloud. And this ancient civilization is at least 1 million years old. They're welcoming, kind, yet evasive, and they have a dark problem they have not solved in over 1 million years. So, most likely I'm going to be reading The Awakening, so I don't know why I'm taking so much time to figure this out. But I am going to go with The Mote in God's Eye, because it has won the Hugo, Nebula, and it hasn't won them, but was nominated for the Hugo, Nebula, and Locus award, and that's kind of one thing I'm trying to check off our books on that list. So in the off chance I end up not reading The Awakening, I'll have that option. So The Mote in God's Eye will be our Kindle book option for a book over 500 pages. Hopefully that is the last prompt like that. All right, on to the 8th prompt. All right, we rolled a 4, and this time we ended up on yellow. We are getting very close to the end of the board. Hopefully the die remains nice. So this is, again, our seasonal prompts, and it has our prompts that have to do with April, spring, and the 2 astrological signs in April. So let's mix these up real quick and choose our prompt. I can see my battery slowly losing power. We're down to 14%, so I'm hoping we can get this game done before it completely stops working. All right, let's split the deck here. And we have a Taurus prompt, which is a book by a Taurus author, of course. That's going to be something that I will have to look up. Let me see which authors have the astrological sign of Taurus. All right, so we're looking for authors born between April 20th and May 20th. I'm just going to start Googling some authors. Dude, there are so many March birthdays. May 23rd, so close. April 4th, April 14th. Why can't I find anything between April 20th and May 20th? Oh, found one. All right, this is the first one I found. We're going with it. It is Zilpha Keatley Snyder. She was born on May 11th, 1927, so definitely a Taurus, because that's between April 20th and May 20th. So this is An All Between. This is the second book in this series. It's a middle grade series that is set on a fantasy world. I forget what the series is called. Green Sky Trilogy. So it's set on a planet called Green Sky, where there are 2 types of people, those who live above ground in the trees and those who live underground. This one follows Tara, who is a 8-year-old girl who lives under the forest floor, and where she lives, food has become very scarce, and one day her father tells Tara that she has to give up her beloved pet for food. So obviously Tara does not want to do that, so she ends up running away and falls into the hands of those who live above ground. she is transported to the upper world of the Kindar and soon discovers that she has both less to fear and more to learn than she could ever imagine. This is the second book in the series. The first book followed a above ground girl. This one follows a girl below the ground and how she gets into the above ground world. This is a middle grade book, so it's a perfect book to put on our TBR. So let me look through the Kindle books and see if I have any books on the Kindle board whose author is a Taurus. This will be a lot quicker because I do look these up before I start this game for the Kindle one. All right, we have 4 options. Well, technically 3 because we already, oh no, technically 2. We happen to already choose 50% of the authors who are Taurus. We chose the Christmas Sisters and the Moat in God's Eye that were both Taurus, and that leaves us with The Summer at Willow Lake, which is the very long contemporary romance we talked about before. And then we also have Fine Layla. Let me see what Fine Layla is about. All right, so Fine Layla is about Meg Ellison. It follows 14-year-old Layla Bailey, who is underprivileged, self-aware, and not used to being noticed. And all she really wants to do is indulge in her love of science, protect her vulnerable younger brother, and steer clear of her unstable mother. So she ends up entering the school competition, which calls for a biome, and Layla ends up choosing chooses her own home to create this biome, as her own home is a hostile ecosystem of indoor fungi and secret shame. So she uses a video camera to capture the inside of her home, which includes mushrooms growing in her brother's dresser, black mold blooming in apartment walls, and the video ends up going viral and CPS is called, and Layla ends up losing her family and her home. And now she has to figure out how to stay whole and stand behind the truth she has shown the world. So we'll go with this book for our Kindle option, as it's kind of a very different book than any that we have so far on this list. So I think it's a good option to put on here. So Fine Layla by Meg Ellison will be our Kindle choice for a book written by a Taurus author. All right, my camera battery is down to 2%, so let me switch that up and then we'll get to the rest of the rolls and I'll be right back. All right, new battery obtained. It's time to continue this game. We are getting so close to the end as long as we don't hit a boarding pass or a time for vacation. So let's go ahead and do our 9th roll of the game. All right, we rolled a 2 and we actually landed on a jar pull, and this jar will be our new release jar. So this is the new release jar. So every 3 months I choose 8 books that I want to read that are coming out the following 3 months, and those books all get put in here. So right now we have books in here from December of 2023 up through mid-April. So as I said at the beginning of this video, I am going to choose 2 books out of the first jar pull we got, which is going to be the new release one. So we are going to choose 2 new release books to put on the TBR, and I do have to read both to be a successful TBR. So let's build up this TBR even more. I am excited they are coming from the new release jar though, because they are definitely books that I am excited to read in here. All right, so let's shake it up and get ready to choose our first one. All right, let's go with this one here. So our first book from this jar is going to be, I don't know if this is gonna, so it's Full Moon Rising. Can't get that to focus. So I actually have that book in hardcover. All right, so this is Full Moon Rising. It came out last year. It's a very colorful cover, which I adore. This is a very unique book, I would say. I haven't read it yet, but it's about the love between a woman and a minotaur. So this book follows Aspeth, who is a holder's daughter, but her family is in danger of losing their hold because her father has gambled away all their magical artifacts. And if the Royal Artifactual Guild finds out, they are going to be in trouble. So Aspeth decides that to help prevent this, she will join the Royal Artificial Guild and the adventurers who explore the ancient underground ruins. But there's one big problem. As a woman, she cannot join this guild unless she has a chaperone. And the best way to get around that problem is to marry one. Now, she needs to find someone to marry that will allow her to be a apprentice, and who better than a guild member who requires a favor of his own. And it just so happens that this guild member is a minotaur who is also a teacher, who is her teacher, and he's about to go into a rut. He doesn't know that she's from a Holder family, which means she is noble either, and he'll want nothing to do with her if he does find that out. So a lot of little secrets going on. It sounds like a very interesting book. And I love books that have like guilds and little like societies in them because I think they're interesting to read. So that will be our first book from the new release jar. All right, let's choose our second book out of here then. All right, let's go with this one here. All right, and our second book out of this jar is going to be The Bletchley Riddle. I don't know if this is going to focus. So this book is by Ruta Septius and Steve Shankin, who are famous for historical and non-fiction history books, which is how this book got into the jar. I've said it in previous videos as well, but I love any books that have to do with Bletchley Park and the Codebreakers back in World War II, and this book is set in Bletchley. All right, so The Bletchley Riddle is a middle grade historical adventure that follows two siblings at Bletchley Park, which is the home of the World War II Codebreakers. So this book is set in the summer of 1940 after their mother has disappeared. So Jacob is 19 years old, and he ends up joining Bletchley Park's top minds to crack the Nazis' Enigma cipher. And his younger sister, 14-year-old Lizzie, decides to embark on a mission to find out what happened to her mother. And as the two of them are kind of on their separate missions, messages and codes are also arriving on their doorstep, and a menacing inspector lurks outside the gates, and they need to figure out, are the messages truly for them, or are they a trap? So they are going to work together to decipher clues, which unravel a shocking puzzle that presents the ultimate challenge. How long must a secret be kept? So a fun little historical mystery middle grade book. All right, we're doing good. We are pretty much at the end of the board as long as we get a number over 2. And if we do, that means we will have finished the game. So let's bring up the game board for our 10th roll and think high numbers. All right, it worked. We got a 4, which means we have finally finished the game without landing on any boarding passes, which I'm super happy about. That also means it's time to choose our last book of the game, which will come out of our Science Fiction Fantasy award-winning / nominee jar, which are books that have been either nominated or awarded for the Locust, Nebula, Hugo, Golden Duck Award, and there's one more like middle grade award. I think that is the Golden Duck in here. Anyway, I have all of these books on Excel spreadsheets, and I randomly choose 75 of them that go in this jar, and as I read one, I randomly put another one in. So there are 75 books in here to choose from. So let's go ahead and see what book will be on our TBR for April. All right, this one looks like a good one. Here we go. All right, our last book for our April TBR is going to be Dream Rider by Sandra Mizel. Really doesn't like to focus on the covers, but I'll put the cover up there. All right, let me take a quick look to see what this book is about because I have not heard of it. I have no idea what it's about. All right, Dream Rider is by Sandra Mizel. It was a nominee for the Locust Award for Best First Novel, and potentially her only novel, because after this, it looks like she got into doing some other things. I am not sure what the book is about because there's not really any description of what the book is actually about. But it has a 3.67 rating on Goodreads. There's only 9 ratings. Probably because it came out in 1983. I assume a lot, and it's out of print now. I had to buy a used copy, which hopefully we'll get here in April. But yeah, I don't really know anything else about it, so we'll learn about it when I get to reading it, I guess. So that is going to be our last book on our April TBR. All right, so we have completed our April TBR. We definitely have a interesting variety of books on here, but I am very happy with how this TBR turned out. I think we do have 11 books that we'll have to get through. But I think it's doable because we do have some middle grade and some young adult books on here. So hopefully that will make the reading easier. I am hopefully going to time manage my April a lot better than I did March, but time will tell. So let's quickly go through our books and see what we'll be reading in April. First up are our jar pulls. We had our Science Fiction Fantasy award-winning / nominee jar. We got Dream Writer by Sandra Miesel for this one. Then for our new release jar, we got The Bletchley Riddle by Ruta Sepetys and Steve Shankin. And we also got Full Moon Rising by Ruby Dixon. For a book by a Taurus author, we have And All Between by Zilpha Keatley Snyder and Find Layla by Meg Ellison. For a book over 500 pages, we have Zodiac Academy's Book 1, The Awakening, and The Mote in God's Eyes. For a series card, which was the Time Quintet series, we have Book 4 in the series, Many Waters. For a book with food in the title, we have Blood Orange and The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. For a book that has a holiday on the cover, a holiday cover theme, we have 8 Nights of Flirting and The Christmas Sisters. For a title with a word related to reading, we have Where the Library Hides and no Kindle options for that one. For a book with a bird on the cover, we have The Phoenix Keeper and Book 3 in the School of Good and Evil series, which is The Last Ever After. And then last but not least, for a book that has fire or flame on the cover or in the title, we have Catching Fire and River on Fire. All right, so my main concerns now are we don't have any books on here that have a brown cover. I actually have an alternate version of Many Waters, which hopefully may have a brown cover. That I really hope so, because I need a brown cover for the month of April. And then the other thing we don't have is a fantasy book that has the word river in it for the magical readathon. We're gonna have to figure that one out. It does just say word with river in the title. It doesn't say it has to be fantasy or fiction. We do have one book that has the word river on the title, but I wasn't really planning on reading that, so we're gonna have to figure that one out as well. But other than that, like I said, I think this TBR went well, and I'm looking forward to getting started on these books once I finish the last couple for March. So this month, the videos I am planning, because we are going to time manage, are the second half of my spring break reading challenge game. The first half will hopefully come out right before, right after this video. And we'll also be hopefully playing the Gilmore Girls reading game as well, bringing that back for season 1 part 2, and then a reading journal update are the 3 other videos I have planned this month. We'll see how it goes. I'm trying to do better with my time management, not pushing everything off until the end of the month. So hopefully I can get those videos out spaced a little bit better in April. We'll see how it goes. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a great reading month in April. Please let me know if you've read any of these lovely books on your TBR previously and what you thought of them. If you have, please let me know what's on your TBR below as well. If you've liked this video, please hit that like button. And if you want to see future videos by me, including future reading games and future TBRs, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you again for joining me. I hope you had as much fun watching this video as I did playing it. And I hope I gave you some good choices to think of for your April TBR as well. Take care, everyone. Again, I hope April goes well for you, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Bye.